This video is about motivation. How do I get motivated is probably one of the most common questions we get asked as trainers, and it's also one of the most frustrating questions that we get asked, because there are 1,000 reasons why people get unmotivated, and there are 1,000 ways to fix the problem of motivation. So matching up your reason for being unmotivated with the action that needs to be taken to make yourself motivated is obviously, it's like this. It's like shooting moving targets, very hard. I think there's two factors that you really have to consider. First is, what is it you want to achieve and how bad do you want it? But also, I think your level of motivation has got a lot to do with how close or how far away you are from your goal. So this is your goal, and this is how far away you are from achieving the goal. So if you're only this far away from achieving the goal, your motivation level is probably high because you can see the goal, it's really clear and it's really close, and you only have to do a few things, take a few steps to get to your goal. But if this is your goal and you're all the way back here, your motivation levels are probably low because the goal is really far away, you can hardly see it, and there's a huge amount of steps in between before you get to your goal. So I think that your level of motivation has got a lot to do with how close or how far away you are from that goal. And I think this is why people fall into the trap of doing short-term challenges, 6-week challenges, 3-week challenges, do as many classes as you can, because they want a goal that's really close, something they can see, because it will help with motivation. The problem with doing the all or nothing approach is that you will do more than you're willing to do all year round. So you might be able to do that much work for 3 weeks to get to that goal, but chances are once you get to the goal, you're going to do nothing afterwards because you're burnt out and you're tired and you've done more than you are willing to do all year round. And you've done that because you were motivated. So how do you change that so that you have motivation for a long time to get to a long-term goal, and then keep doing it even when you're not motivated? I think the key is to, first of all, you've got to focus on the low-hanging fruit. So that's doing all the simple, basic things that are within your reach, simple and easy. So that is physically going to the gym. Who cares what you do when you're at the gym, as long as you're going to the gym on a regular basis? That means you're not at home sitting on the couch eating chips. You could start food prepping. Now, it doesn't matter what food you food prep. What matters is that now you're eating home cooked food rather than takeaways. So you might not be making the best meals. You might not be making everything within a certain amount of macros or perfect meals. At least you're eating better than you were before. The low-hanging fruit is all the stuff that you should be doing all year round, but the things that are the first things to go when we're burnt out and we don't want to do anything. So if you've got a goal and you are super unmotivated because you're really far away from that goal, and it might be you need to lose a huge amount of weight, or you might need to start strength training for the first time, you've got no muscle and you've got to start from scratch. Whatever it is, if it's really far away, you've got to just focus on the steps that are in front of you. Give yourself little milestones along the way. So I think when people ask, how do I get motivated? The more demotivated they are, normally it's because they've picked a goal that's really far away. And yes, it's still good to have a really big, faraway goal, but if you haven't broken it down into steps in your head, that's probably why you're unmotivated. So rather than wanting to lose 30 kilos, you might just think about losing 2 kilos. So don't fall into the trap of going, right, well, if I do a 6-week challenge, I can lose 2 kilos. You'll probably lose 4 kilos, and then after the challenge, you'll put 5 on. When you're setting these little goals, ask yourself, are these steps going towards the bigger goal? Or is it 1 step forward, 2 steps back? 1 step forward, 2 steps back? Because then you've got heaps of motivation and then none. Heaps of motivation and then none. So to talk yourself into being motivated, ask yourself first, what is it you're actually working towards? Clarify your goal, be clear on the goal, be realistic about how long it's going to take you to get there, and then instead of just focusing on that big goal, focus on the low-hanging fruit, the little things that you can do right now that's going to edge you beep, 1 step closer at a time until eventually you do get to that long-term goal. When you start any new challenge or any new learning a new skill, it's really demotivating because first of all, you're so far away and you make more stuff ups at the start because you're learning. So every time you do a stuff up, you feel like you're not moving forward. So it's going to be forever. But if you stick with it, then eventually it gets faster and easier because you start to know what you're doing, you make less stuff ups, you start to build that momentum. But then you get closer and closer, and as you get closer and you actually start to feel a sense of achievement, things start to change, you actually start wanting to do more. The goal is getting closer and closer, so as it starts to get closer, you start feeling more motivated because you know there's less steps to get there. So I think motivation is always relevant to how far away you are from where you want to be. The closer you get, the more motivated you become. So if you're at the start and you're waiting for the motivation, the problem is you haven't earned any motivation yet. You haven't started working towards having motivation. So you actually have to start when you're unmotivated, when you feel your worst, when you know the least, when you know you're going to make all your stuff ups, make all your mistakes, that just know that the motivation will come. You have to start before you're motivated. You must start before you're motivated. I'm doing this video now in the middle of winter because we're here in Melbourne. It happens every winter where it just gets to the coldest part of the year and everyone goes, you know what, I'm just going to sit down, do nothing, comfort eat, sit in front of the TV and start in summer. Then by the time you get to summer, you're actually not motivated to do it because you're feeling worse. You've set yourself further and further back during winter. If this is where you're at right now and you are not motivated, look at the low-hanging fruit in your life. What are the simple basic things that you can do right now that will stop you from going backward? These are the things that will keep you, yes, moving forward, maybe not moving forward as fast as if you had motivation and you were doing a lot, but it's going to move you further forward than if you just sit down and do nothing and go backwards and end up with zero motivation, which means you're even less likely to get started. So if you have zero motivation, ask yourself, is it because you haven't set a proper goal? Is it because you don't really want the goal? Or is it because you're so far away from the goal that you don't even want to get started? If it's that, then you need to break your goal down into tiny, tiny, tiny little steps. Start with the easiest stuff first. Eventually you'll get to a point where you plateau and you're not getting any results. Then you work your way up the list and you start doing the harder things. But there will be things right now that you know you can do. You just can't be bothered doing. It might be getting up earlier. It might be doing food prep 2 or 3 times a week because you know that one food prep a week doesn't last. It might be changing your eating habits on the weekend. It might be changing your breakfast. Tell you what, teaching someone to change their breakfast, it sounds easy. You're not just changing their breakfast, you're changing their morning habits. You're changing what time they get up in the morning. It's not just their food. So if you're not motivated to change your breakfast, it's not just because you don't want to change the food. It's because you've got to change your whole life around it. So if you are struggling with motivation, my advice is be really clear on what you are wanting to achieve. Be really clear on how long it's going to take you to get there, and then work your way down the list. Break it down into as many steps as you need to so that you have an actual plan mapped out in front of you, and then just focus on one step at a time. As you take those steps, your motivation levels will steadily increase. If you are starting with zero motivation, it's probably just because you've been doing zero work. As soon as you do a little bit of work, you'll get a little bit of motivation. Do a little bit more work, you'll get a little bit more motivation, until you get to the point where you've done a lot of work, you've had a great result, and then your motivation levels will be up here and you'll be flying. If you're motivated to get your food on track, make sure you watch my other video, 10 ways to eat in a calorie deficit without eating less food.